Everything is fueled from me wanting to be a better person on earth.
It's time to do your part.
Okay, still on the road, but I'm in Cathedral City. That's in the Coachella Valley. Most of you know Coachella for the concert. And I'm joined with this dude across from me, 6 feet across from me because we're COVID compliant. His name is John Moore. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm happy. I'm stoked to be here with you. You know, you've got such a perspective and a voice, and this is, we're due for this, right?
We are due for this.
We are due for this. A lot of you that are watching this or listening have seen him on Facebook, and you know, again, he's very active when it comes to just a lot of social issues. So my first question for all of my guests is, I asked you to have a sit down with me. You said, of course. And so why did you want to have this talk? Why were you so quick to say yes?
Well, because I love you, and you know, we're good friends. That makes it's pretty special to me. But I love what you're about, and I think that you and I have a great connection, and we're on the same page. Mm-hmm. And so I want to be able to promote that within myself and within what you do as well.
I love it. Good. Well, thank you. And it's like, this is such an important platform because how else can you promote really anything or your voice, right? And
exactly.
Again, you've got such a strong voice. So always moving in with guests, we talk about their background. So tell us a bit about you, where you're from, your background, paint us a whole picture.
Okay. I am 48 years old. I grew up in a little town called Liberty, Mississippi. I'm the baby of 7 kids.
Wow.
I was raised on a dairy farm. We raised everything, dairy, cattle, horses, everything. And like I said, I'm the baby of 7 kids, 5 boys and 2 girls. And I left Mississippi when I was 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And moved to Atlanta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And was raised Southern Baptist in a very strict Southern Baptist family, where the 100 yards from the front steps of our church was the church that my grandfather built. So, you know, you can imagine how that was. And also,
actually, I can't imagine.
No, I don't think anybody really wants to imagine, but there was a lot of good and bad about that. Mm-hmm. You know, I do have a very strong spiritual background, mm-hmm. and that is carried me, I think, a lot in my life and has kept my morals and values where they need to be intact. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm so opinionated. Mm-hmm. But you know, I think there's a balance with all of that, and I'm sure that we'll get into that mm-hmm. with this conversation.
We definitely will. It's interesting because the reason I reacted that way is because I'm from California. I can't even envision what that looks like. But that's kind of part of your lineage, right? Is religion, the church. Your grandfather built this church.
Right.
Wow. So you identify as gay. You've been a gay man, right?
Came out when I was 18.
Okay, so
to myself.
To yourself. All right. So as you continue, I want to hear a bit about Atlanta and then how you got to the Coachella Valley. But how did that all? There was some conflict, I'm sure, with your sexuality and then your upbringing in your family, obviously, right?
Well, it was a huge conflict within myself because I was a very spiritual and am a very spiritual person, but I would say I identified as a Christian back then. Now I identify as a spiritual individual, mm-hmm. and I didn't know the difference. And getting in touch with that, and also being in a very, very strict primitive Southern Baptist religion, made me doubt, you know, my salvation, and how was I going to approach that, knowing that I was a gay man, and was I going to go to hell? How was I going to deal with that? And was I just going to live repressed the rest of my life? You know, I even contemplated many times of becoming a minister, mm-hmm. and you know, obviously I didn't choose that, but just the whole process of accepting yourself and being told by, you know, your peers, and that this is a phase that you're going through. Mm-hmm. So I completely believed that it was a phase. Mm-hmm. I completely believed that it was something that I could grow out of, that I was going to be able to convert. You know, it was just hormones. It was just, I was a young man, and mm-hmm. I was just having feelings, and that was going to eventually go into women. And, you know, I was engaged at one point in my life.
Wow. Actually, I'm not surprised to hear that. I remember those feelings too. Like in, you know, my preteens into my teens is like, okay, this is just a phase. And when I start to really be a man, it'll be gone, and I'll be able to be straight, and it won't be an issue.
Exactly.
And then I finally forfeited at a young age, like, no, this just doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? So thank you for being candid and open about that. All right. So How did you deal with it? You're talking about dealing with it. Did you read? Did you just do a lot of introspective thought? Did you go to classes? I mean, the internet wasn't around then. What'd you do?
Well, it was a process of elimination. I mean, I dated. I had a lot of girlfriends. I dated a lot of girls, and the more you get into life, and you're trying to make to have your soulmate or your partner, get somebody. I started realizing how much I was going to be hurting these women, although I deeply cared about them. Mm-hmm. There was no way that I could love them the way that they deserve to be loved. Mm-hmm. So it comes to a point where you just give up, and you don't give up. You realize how selfish you're being mm-hmm. by involving an innocent woman in this, or innocent person in general, because you're just trying to be in the closet and selfish. And then, when you put the things into perspective that way, to say, I can't do this to another human being. Mm-hmm. I think that's when it really helped me deal with, and I was living in Atlanta the first time, and I was working at a department store, and it was Macy's, and I was working in the young men's department. This gentleman kept coming in and out of my department, and I could feel that I had an attraction to him. I felt that there was something with him too, but I didn't have any idea because I'd never been around gay people, and I didn't know how to deal with it.
Wait. So this was kind of what you're explaining right now was your first experience, like in your gay body?
Yeah, exactly. And really dealing with, I was dating a girl.
Wow, this is at 18.
And I mean, I knew that I had feelings for guys, but I thought the way that I felt was the way that all men felt. Yeah. I just thought it was, you're going through puberty, and I thought it was just something that I had to deal with, and I was going to find the right woman, and I was going to be able to get married. Mm-hmm. So, one day, he dropped me his number and asked me to call him, and I called him, and he asked me out on a date. He had no idea that I was straight. I guess he was taking his chances, but he had no idea. I was 18 years old. And I gave him a call, and I could remember the butterflies and the feeling that I felt, and
the fear,
and fear probably so, but adrenaline as far as I'm actually doing this, and I'm actually, I'm gonna see mm-hmm. if this is real or not. I'm gonna see. I'm going to conquer this and find out what it's about. Mm-hmm. So that's where. He asked me out on a date. Mm-hmm. I went out on a date with him, and I'd been sexually with many women at this point in my life. And when we went out, we went to a billiards. I wasn't old enough to go to a bar, so we went to a billiards place and shot pool. And mm-hmm. on the way back, he leaned over and kissed me. Mm-hmm. It was the first time I'd ever kissed a guy. I didn't even think that I never even thought about guys kissing. I didn't know that was such a thing. Never crossed my mind. When he did, the feeling, the exhilaration that I got from that was incredible. Mm-hmm. It was so overwhelming that at that moment in my life, and all the religion that I had been, and all the things that I'd gone through, and accepting Lord as my Savior, when that went through, all those feelings, this was the most powerful thing I'd ever felt in my life. And I knew from that moment that there was nothing wrong with me. Mm. That I was
no shame.
The most organic thing I'd ever felt in my life, and this was just a kiss. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized, if this feels this natural, I am who I am. And I was lucky because I was able to accept it that way. Now, I didn't come out to my parents, my family, to years and years after that. Mm-hmm. But that was, that's pretty much how it happened.
Wow. I think a lot of people that don't know gay people or don't understand our plight or our stories seem to think that we all kind of have the same, our stories are all so similar. And they're not. I mean, there are in some ways. I remember the first time I kissed a guy, and I remember a lot of the same emotions, Right. But I think the difference for me is I did have a little bit of shame attached to it, and I had a lot of fear. I was scared that my peers were going to know. But I was different, right? Like my mother was an age educator, so I was around gay people as a young kid.
Right.
I almost was encouraged. Do you think that you're bisexual?
No.
Okay.
No.
Now the reason
at that time I did.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. At that time I did, and I think that's a phase that a lot of gay men go through. Uh-huh. Is I'll put my foot in the water and test it out, and if I say I'm bisexual, then I can always go back because I'm still saying that I like women. But no, I'm 100% gay, mm-hmm. and there's no doubt in my mind. And the reason that I feel that way is because I have experienced sex with women. I have experienced really long-term relationships with women. Mm-hmm. So where I think a lot of people get it, confused, like straight men, when they've had maybe a bromance or they've had some type of interaction or feeling with another man, mm-hmm. they think maybe they could. No, it's not the same.
Yeah.
people who have been able to experience both sides can experience and know without a shadow of a doubt, this is who I am. Where I think that people get it confused is when they have not. It's, how do you know that you don't like sushi if you've never tried it?
That's funny. It's funny that you use sushi because that's the same example I use. How do you know? Sushi.
Yeah.
All right. So, and I had to ask also because I think a lot of gay men, what are they called? Gold star gays?
Gold star.
Yeah.
Gold star, yeah. That's
So, not that I'm trying to have you direct the conversation or your sexuality in a different manner or way. I just think that again, to give clarity to some people who don't understand what we go through, that might be considered maybe you were bisexual at some point. And you said you were. And now, but that was part of your journey.
Yeah, and I would say that I didn't say that I was bisexual. I would say that I felt that I needed to say that in case it was just exactly what you just said. It was a part of my journey, and it was reaching the point to understand who I really was.
Yeah. I remember my friend Allie, who she was my girlfriend for like 3 years.
Beard?
She was my beard. She was cool with it.
Yep.
All right, I want you to talk about your coming out experience to your family because that's probably. I want to hear about Atlanta. Well, actually, I already heard enough from Atlanta. You met a dude, you realized you were gay.
Yeah.
And
that's really what it is. I didn't even go out. I never really experienced more than that in Atlanta. I wish I had because I love Atlanta. But that was kind of the gist of Atlanta.
Yeah.
When I came out to my family, so when I was 19 years old, I had a brother that passed away. He had an epileptic seizure and passed away.
Jeez.
It was one of the most horrific things I've ever gone through. But what I believe in life, when there's something bad that happens, there's always something good.
A silver lining, I agree.
Yes, there's always a silver lining. And with my brother's death, I have never taken, and it's been years and years and years, over 25 years that he died. I've never taken 1 ounce, 1 day for granted. And I've promised for him, because he wasn't able to live, that my life I had to live for me and him. And it's really helped me, gain that happiness that everybody deserves.
Yeah.
And so, I was just not going to take 1 day for granted. And I was very close. He was 4 years older than me, and I was very close to him.
It's interesting because death can really, if it affects us all differently, and for some people it can cause arrested development, it can stunt them, it can break them. And I like what you're talking about because we're all different, but it's important to learn from your experiences, right? What is the silver lining in this? Everything has silver lining. What is it?
Well, and the silver lining for me was it took me a while. Don't get me wrong. It took me a while to be able to get there. I was angry at God. I was angry at everybody. I couldn't believe that a 25-year-old perfect picture of health man dropped dead. It was horrific.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to find what's going to keep you going or it's going to break you.
Yeah.
It did break my family. My family really, I feel that over that we split up because of how much we were so close and how much we loved each other. When we went through that, we were on guard, and my father passed away a year after that. So going through that, and then my father, and he grieved the last year of his life. He grieved over my brother's death. So, that was, and that also made it very, very nerve-wracking for me to come out of the closet because they had been through so much, then to turn around and have to put this on them, knowing the religious background and how I felt they were going to, not accept it, but to address it.
Yeah, and there was already a lot going on.
Yeah, it was a lot going on, and once again, am I being selfish by putting this on them? So I didn't come out to my family. I didn't come out to my family at all. My sister outed me until I was 25 years old. And I had moved out here from Atlanta.
Are you glad she outed you?
Yes. Yeah, and that's a great question because, yes, I am glad she outed me. And she's one of my best friends in life, and she punished herself for many years because she felt like that wasn't her place. And the forgiveness and the route that we've gone through has been incredible.
What's her first name?
Lori.
Everything happens for a reason, Lori. No, I get it because that's hats off to her.
Yeah,
because it's a very funky, weird experience dealing with that and trying to tell the people you love what's going on. So, continue.
So she was at the time she was with a guy that was in religion. He was a youth minister for a Southern Baptist church, and when I was going home to Mississippi for a family reunion. And when my older sister already knew. I'd already told my older sister years ago, I broke down, I needed somebody. And she had always swore that she was going to keep it between her and I, but she was not happy with it. And, she said, I'll take it to my grave because she thought that I was going to eventually change, like that ever happens. So when my sister, my younger sister, well, I'm going home for the family reunion. She's going to pick me up in New Orleans, and she goes, "I need to ask you something." And I said, "Okay, but just know whatever you ask me, I'm not going to lie about it. So don't ask anything you don't want to know."
And you knew what it was.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming.
Is this like
So-
the first thing when you got in the car at the airport?
No, this was still on the phone when I'm in California. She asked me when I'm still here, and,
Okay.
and I'd probably been in Palm Springs, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe. So she said, "Are you gay?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she goes, "My love for you is unconditional. We'll pick you up at the airport." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is incredible. This was so much easier than what I thought it would be." Well, that was the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
So I get in, her and her husband pick me up. They take me out in a field in somewhere in Louisiana, not the place you want to be when you just came out to your family, with the Bible. And he's basically has the Bible over my head and is saying to me that that God sat down and talked to him last night, and this is the way he was told to handle it. They were going to enroll me into a program called Exodus, which is a gay or de-gay program. And I said, absolutely not. I said, I did not tell you this because I have a problem with who I am. I told you this because you asked me. I am very happy with who I am, and I'm very happy with being gay. And if this is an issue, it's your issue, not mine. So that's where it all hit the fan.
And you were 25 at this time?
I was 25. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I go home to the family reunion, and as she's telling my family members, they're pulling their kids out of the room that I'm in. These are kids that I've been there when they were born. I was there when they were born at the hospital. These are kids that are like my own children.
Yeah.
And they're basically pulling these kids out of the room. Like
You're
I'm
watching this. Jeez.
horrified, but you wouldn't have known it because I was not going to let my guard down. I was going to get through that,
Yeah.
hold my head up high, get back to California, and then go that route.
And live your life. Yeah.
So it was very interesting. Before she told anybody, and she told me that she goes, "I'm going to tell the family." I said, "You can tell everybody, but you're not telling my mother. I'll tell my mother myself." So I sat down that night before the family reunion the next day, and I sat in my mother's lap, just like a big old baby. And I said, "I got something to tell you, and it's not going to be easy, but I want you to know I would never do anything to hurt you, and I love you." And I told her, and my mom said, her exact words were, "I'll never let anybody talk bad about you. My love for you is unconditional." And of course, all of that changed whenever your peers, her children started talking to her, and you can't handle it this way. We've got to handle it a certain way. So then we get to the family reunion, and that all happens. And my mom's taking me back to the airport. My mother, in my life, I've never known to have a drink, not one drink of alcohol. Her dad was an alcoholic. Her mom was an alcoholic, and she's been in her entire life. She passed away this past year, but she, had that Bible in her hand, and she was a religious woman. We went to a restaurant in Louisiana, and she sat down and ordered a daiquiri, and that's when I knew. I knew that, okay, there's going to be more to this. So I got on a plane, I go back, and when I get back home, I get a phone call from my mother, and she goes, "You're going to hell. You're going to go to hell." And I'm like, so we had this, and all I felt like is like, I don't care what my brothers and sisters think. It's all about my mom. And if my mom's okay with this, I'll be fine. And then when she hit me with it, and then she, even turned around and she said, "I wished you had died instead of your brother," which was just horrific to hear that from your parent. She had, like I said, my mother passed away, but before she died, she did apologize for that. And I certainly know that I had to learn that my mother is human. She was hurting,
Yeah.
and she was lashing out,
Yeah.
and she would have never said that. She didn't mean it. So, there's a lot of forgiveness that has to go into things like this too. So, I'm back in California, and I am alone, and I did not know what to do. I did not know where to go. My family would not speak to me. Nobody would speak to me. I was here by myself, and I was the scaredest little 25-year-old boy you'd ever met in your life. And so I reached out, and I started going to different churches, and I started talking to the pastors, and I'm saying, somebody's got to help me with this. I got to figure out, am I wrong? Am I wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I went to this little church, and there was a pastor named Ann Martin. She's no longer around. She died of Parkinson's a couple of years ago, but I knew her. She didn't know me. we sat down, and she told me she wanted me to write a letter to each and every one of my family members and address them of all their accomplishments, put it all on the same letter, and mail it to them. But at the end of the letter, say, I release you, because I couldn't get through. I couldn't even get them to answer my phone calls. I release you in my life. I love you all, and I hope you're the best, but I've got to move on. And I did that. And I sent the letter to all of my family members, and it was about 20, I'd say 15, 20 years went by before they started trickling back into my life. And that was all because of my nephews and nieces were getting to the age where they were realizing what happened. And the silver lining, which it always is a silver lining, my mother passed away, I'm going to say 6 months ago. And when we read her will, on top of her will was that letter that I wrote. And I've got it in the bedroom. The letter that I wrote that I'd forgotten that I had written. And
was on the top of everything.
On the top of every single thing. And it was sitting on the top, and I could hear my sisters like in the other room, and they were bickering back and forth. And one of my sisters ran in the room, and she handed it to me. And on the very back of it, in my mother's writing, it said, all he's wanted is love. He's begging for our love. We've handled this completely wrong. So, that being said, for any kid, anybody that's out there that's going through these challenges, you may go through these tough times, whether you're gay or straight. We all go through tough times. But there is a silver lining. And I was very close to my mother before she died, and was for the last couple of years of her life. And I pride that, because I'd say, whatever challenges you're having out there with your family and people you love, make it right. Get it right. You never know when they're going to go. But to have that letter and to hear in my mother's words, in her writing, I should say, is he only loved us. He was begging for our love. It was incredible. It was such a closure that now I can let her go and know that she knew. She knew how much I loved the family. So, it's pretty exciting. It's pretty powerful.
I don't know how you can explain that without crying.
Yeah, well, it's
that's incredibly.
Yeah. If it were tears coming out, it would be tears of joy right now, because it was exactly what I needed to hear. Because there were so many things that, although I knew I wasn't a disappointment, I've been very successful in what I wanted to accomplish in my life. But to hear my mom know that was awesome.
Heavy.
Heavy.
Yep. Deep breath. Whew. All y'all, man, I'm so pleased that you are so cool and so open to share these stories and get so vulnerable with us. That is really heavy. So do you think that was your mom's biggest regret? I mean, that letter was on the top of her will. That was the first thing she wanted people to hear.
Brian, I hope not. I hope that wasn't a regret for my mom. I hope that we all learn from these situations, that it's a learning experience.
You have such a good attitude. Go ahead.
Well, you either do or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a happy person, you better get happy.
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago. I met a woman that I worked with.
Hold on, let me interrupt you real quick,
Yeah.
because I don't want to lose this next question, which is kind of in line with what we're talking about. The message that your mom put on the back of the letter that was more addressed towards your siblings, did they all fall in line?
So this is the way that was handled. Is my sister wanted me, and my husband wanted me to read it when they read the will, and I wouldn't do it because they were all grieving. I moved away. They spent taking care of my mother. They deserved this to be just as much about them as it was about me, because we had all lost our mother. And how dare me come in and try to take and
But it was their request of you.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where you would say that. It was my mother wanted it read, and I'm sure that the siblings that knew told everybody, but it didn't need to be read.
Gotcha.
It didn't need to be read at that point. Everybody needed to go through what they needed to go through without having, any regrets. And I'm sure that each and every one of them have felt that they didn't handle it the best. But they are great people.
So are you good with them now?
Yeah. I mean, just like anybody else, everybody has their challenges with their siblings and people that they're close to, but I really don't. I mean, I want them to all do good. We don't have any crosswords. What I always knew is that my nephews and nieces, when they got older, were going to bring me back in their life, or that's what was my hope.
How many gay nieces or nephews do you have?
None. So far, I'm the only one. They gave it all to me.
I always think it's a numbers game, but go ahead. Sorry.
But
they gave it all to me.
I got
guy.
the halo. Well, you know what? Now that I look at it at 48 years old, it's not a bad thing.
Bro, you're the gayest dude I know. You're super masculine, but you're like, he's got.
I wear it on my sleeve, baby.
My God. And it's great because it's you have to love you. It's all about self-love.
Well,
and you emulate that.
There's a reason for that. I grew up in a very rural place in this country. A very rural place that hasn't dealt with these issues, because every time they have one of these issues, they chase the person out of the town or the person runs.
Yeah, they don't address it.
I ran. I didn't run because of that. Well, maybe I did run because of the reason. I ran to find better ways and better days.
You ran to find yourself.
And I ran to find myself.
More importantly, you wouldn't find yourself if you stayed in Mississippi.
But it's important and have social media and have what we have right now, not to use that as a platform, and especially the outgoing personality that I have, that I'm able and feel comfortable enough to do that. Mm-hmm. There are so many people. You would not believe how many people from Mississippi that have reached out to me and asked me how to handle it with their children or themselves.
Yeah, no, you've told me this before, right? And you have become an advocate, and I think that hopefully maybe somehow this can continue to keep that ball rolling because you've got a lot of influence. Social media. Let's change the conversation a little bit because a good part of what we talk about in this podcast is social issues. May they be negative or positive. It's just really about your perspective and kind of your part in all of them. And you definitely have taken a role in all of this. So tell me why you feel so passionate about the things that you do, and why do you feel so okay to be so vocal on social media?
So it's
a loaded question.
Yeah, no, but I kind of just touched on that. I think it's our duty. It's my duty. There was a lot of gay men and women that fought, that stonewall, and our history, that have put their lives on the line so I can marry my husband, that I can have the equality that I have. It is my duty to be out there doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody out there, some people are not as vocal as me. Some people are they do it in other ways. Like I have a friend that's, really high up in the military, that he's made a lot of changes for the gay and lesbian community through his power. Mm-hmm. And he said to me one time, he goes, "You're so vocal and you're so passionate out there. I wish I could be more like that." I'm like, "You're doing your job. This is what I was set up." I think we all have our own paths, and I think it is important, or I should say our own platforms.
Yeah.
You're doing this.
Yeah.
This is your platform,
That's encouraging, though, for other people.
But the main thing, it's not sitting in a room and having an interview with mics in front of us. It's sitting in a room and having a conversation with a friend and saying, "I care about you. You are my brother." And if you want to get biblical, if you want to talk about it, it's love thy neighbor, not your white neighbor. Love your neighbor, and it goes back to this life is not as hard as we make it. It's pretty damn simple. Love. And compassion and considerate, and not being so selfish and realizing other people, So
can people change?
Yes, absolutely. I did. I absolutely did. If I had have continued to stay in Mississippi, even if I had came out in Mississippi, which probably would have never happened, I would have been a lot different than what I am, because the way that people change, in my opinion, is experiences. So I can remember whenever the first trip that I ever took, I worked for the airlines. When I moved to Atlanta, I worked for Delta Airlines, and I took a cruise, because we get these great deals on these cruises, and I took a cruise down to the Bahamas. You get there and you pull up on that ship, and there's these big casinos everywhere. There's these big casinos everywhere, and it's all Americanized. And then you get in a little taxi and they drive you down to the poor areas, and you realize just how poor people are. I grew up poor. That was the first time I realized
that you didn't grow up poor.
That I didn't grow up poor.
Right. You grew up American poor.
I grew up American poor. So that was an experience.
Yeah,
and then I saw all these people that are running around so happy to see us, trying to make our visit, our stay wonderful. When you open yourselves up to different people and different cultures, embrace it and understand everybody has a will and a passion to be on this earth to live, and God put them there. So they deserve.
So almost every guest I have on here, maybe I'm just subconsciously choosing these people because this is one thing I know that they are passionate about, but we talk about travel and culture and being exposed and being open to it. Why do you think that some people aren't? They don't want to be exposed to it?
Well, like, for instance, my aunt, which passed away a couple years ago, my mother's sister, she'd never been on an airplane her entire life. She was a wonderful person and a very inspiration in my life. She taught me a lot of morals and values that a lot of people that I know don't have. She was a wonderful person. However, she didn't get to experience the things that I experienced in life and the cultures and the difference in, races. So therefore, she was closed-minded. I mean, wouldn't you be?
Was she racist?
Yeah.
Wouldn't I be? That's I can't answer that. I mean,
well, I don't know if that's a fair way to say it. Is no, not necessarily wouldn't you be, but experiences in our lives.
All that stuff is curiosity. It makes me curious. So that's what got me on a plane. I mean, I've got friends from home that don't fly and don't like to leave that area, and that's fine. But there's still other ways. Granted, we live in a different time now, but there's other ways to be exposed to culture without leaving.
Right.
But she comes from a different era where you did have to get on the plane.
Right.
Well,
and let me rephrase that a little bit. There's no okay ever for racism and bigotry or anything like that. But what I mean by that is, wouldn't you be closed off?
No, I get what you're saying, and yes, I think that if I was in her shoes, which is important to try to identify, correct.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that what I'm hearing is it didn't change the fact that she was still a loving person. She didn't live with hate or vitriol. She just didn't really.
No, I mean she didn't, and I have to talk about another aunt that traveled all the time. My other aunt has seen every state in the United States. Her and her husband, that's all they did was travel, and she's a very religious person, probably one of the most religious people I've ever met. But she had an openness and an understanding about her because she had experienced and learned how to be close and love people that were different from her.
Yeah.
It's the sad thing about it, and I think it's one of the things that we do the worst in this country, is that we don't educate through travel the way that we should. And if you look at this past election, look at all the rural towns and the way they voted, and look at all the big cities and the way they voted, because there is a mix of people in all these big cities, in New York, in LA, in California in general. Once you open yourself up and understand your neighbor and where they come from and their culture, and you can embrace and love that. I can remember when I first moved to Atlanta, my next door neighbor was from India, and him and his family, every single day I'd walk by, they were cooking curry. I'd never even had curry. Didn't even know what it tasted like. Finally, one day they invited me in to eat. I became really close to those people. His dad was a doctor. They're living in an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment with 4 kids, and he's becoming a doctor, and his dad had just became a doctor. Incredible. And that's what started opening me up to understand there's so much I can learn. And to anybody that's watching this, give it a chance.
Look at him. Tell him again.
Give it a chance. Give it a chance, because I can guarantee you, look, there is good people everywhere you go, all over this world. It is not, you should never be judged on the color of your skin, but of the content of your character. I mean, it's you give people a chance, and yes, you're going to run across some bad people, but it's not always because of how they were raised or who they are. It's a lot of times just who they are, but most people are good.
Yeah, I think all people are good for the most part, and sometimes they just get misled or they want to focus their energies elsewhere. Why are you so passionate about the Black Lives Matter movement? Not the organization, because there's a lot of people have issues with that, but just Black lives in general, and you have a lot of compassion. Why?
All lives can't matter until Black lives matter, and that's as simple as it comes. Is I put a lot on this about Facebook when all these protests were going on, and a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons I do it, a lot of people from Mississippi that I grew up with would openly ask me, and it was good discussions. It wasn't these fights or these arguments. And I remember this one girl. I knew her family very well. There were 3 girls. Her mother was a single mother. They grew up in a single wide trailer. She is now a nurse. She lives in Texas. She has worked her butt off to be where she's at right now. And she hit me up, and she saw one of my posts, and she hits me up, and she goes, "What do you mean white privilege?" She goes, "Somebody said that I had white privilege the other day. How could I have white privilege? You know how I grew up." I explained it to her. I said, white privilege is not about your finances. It's about walking down the street and somebody crossing the street to get away from you because of the color of your skin.
Or you're jogging and you're being shot.
Or you're shot, being killed, or you're
just jogging.
You jump on an elevator and people jump off, but only, or you go into a department store and security's following you around.
Yeah.
I said, that's white privilege. It's not. And she goes, I never looked at it that way. I said, and there's another way. Education, explaining. You know, somebody saying white privilege to a poor boy from Mississippi, I'm not going to get it. I have to surround myself with people that have gone down that road, that are affected by it. I'm an innocent bystander looking in, so I need to educate myself. So what I say to people is open yourself up and ask the questions. Don't just immediately say, oh, well, like I hear it all the time, is all lives matter. Yes, all lives do matter. You're absolutely correct. But our black community has suffered and endured so much pain, and at the hands of, that should have never been. There should have never been slavery. We all know it, and I think most people agree that it should have never been. But the repression and the systemic racism that has come along with that is still prevalent in this country, and for us not to acknowledge that and know it, this is where we, as Americans, and what our country is about, is to build up. And that's when you grab your brother's hands and you're like, you absolutely, I have, hanging right over there, a Black Lives Matters mask. And I wear it just about everywhere that I go. I can't tell you how many young black kids that come up to me in Costco and come up to me and shake my hand and say, thank you. You know what? What a great feeling, but it's not something that I need to feel. We should all be doing that.
Yeah.
We should punish people that don't. The people that should get mistreated are the ones that are not. We should be building each other up.
I agree.
I'm gonna go off and be really cheesy right now. It says in the Bible, you all remember it when we were kids, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight.
I've never heard that.
Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight is what a song that we sang growing up. And it was exactly that every color and every kid is precious in God's sight. So why would that be any different to humans on earth? You know, and that's the way we should look at it. Stop being so selfish.
Say it again. What is it?
Red and yellow, black and white.
Red and yellow, black and white.
They are precious in His sight.
They are precious in His sight. I wasn't raised in religion. So, all right. Silver lining with what we have been dealing with the past 4 years and this past year and the past 6 months. Give me some silver lining.
Okay, I'm going to give you some silver lining.
Talk in the microphone for me, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to give you some silver lining, and I think, once again, what we were talking about earlier, unfortunately, we had to endure these last 4 years to realize just how divided our country is and just how many people out there that felt their way but was suppressed because they weren't allowed, because it wasn't the ethical thing to do or the popular thing to do. And because we had a president that allowed it, everybody got a voice. 70 million people got a voice. And you know, you can't sit here and tell me that those 70 million people are all bad. They're not. But they certainly are different than you and I, because they were able to vote for a person that was promoting misogyny, racism, homophobia, every bit of that. And they, you know, and I ask, I've had these conversations of why? Well, you know, he's against abortion. So that's, because you believe that abortion is wrong, then you're going to punish everything else that he's causing and all this division that he's caused. So to answer your question, what is the silver lining? Is we needed to see that as a country, because you and I live in our little bubble in Palm Springs, and we don't see that as much, but it's out there, and we saw it, and we saw it in a dark way. Having social media, you see it so much more now, and it's very important, and it's so important that we stand up the way we did and elect a president that this is not going to allow that. So those people see, there is room for change, and it's not cool to be on the other side of the fence. We need to move forward as a country, not backwards. And that's exactly, I always like to reference it as, the dragon's last laying. And that's exactly what I feel about this whole presidency is this was the dragon rearing its ugly head, and it had to come up one last time before we put it down. We now have our first female vice president that is black.
It's pretty cool.
If that is not the coolest thing in my lifetime, I don't know what is. Now, I love Biden, and I think he's going to be an incredible president, but I love to know that we have a female vice president.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. How many friends have you unfriended on Facebook throughout all this?
I did really, really, really good until about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then this whole thing came out, and they started attacking. And when they saw that it was closed and it wasn't looking good, they got really, really nasty, and they started attacking my other friends. I could handle them pretty good when it was a one-on-one, and I'm not going to say that my Democratic friends weren't doing some of the same things, but the difference is my Democratic friends had their equality on the line. These other people didn't.
Yeah, and livelihood to some degree.
Livelihood, healthcare, every bit of it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always like to kind of, I'm redundant with this message, but it's like the goal here is to try to understand somebody else's experience, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. What are some things, when I talk to you about this, you've had some time to think about it, what are some things that you wanted to talk about today? Right, because I obviously steer the train. Well, no, you don't steer a train, but I steer this.
You steer the train wreck?
I steer the boat. I steer the train wreck. But I'm sure there were some things that you thought about that you wanted to mention or talk about. Is there anything off the top of your head that you want to touch on?
Well, I think that I'm in a very happy place in my life right now, and for many reasons. But I think that we are now in the first part of a healing process of our country, which is the greatest country that's ever been. I never understood this whole "Make America Great Again" on the country that was always the greatest.
Totally.
I'm like, how do you make? And I even asked.
But it didn't. It made America worse. Which was in my experience.
And all of a sudden you see "Keep America Great Again," and I'm like, what? But it took me a long time to really understand.
That was bizarre for me. Go ahead.
But you have to understand, and I got it. I understood. I asked a few people that were on the other side. I'm like, what do you mean "Make America Great Again"? They're like, well, you live in California, you have wonderful homes, and you have great jobs, and you have great vacations, and all this. I'm like, well, you can have that too, but you chose not to. I chose to have what I have. So,
and again, go to the Bahamas and go look at what freedom doesn't look like.
Exactly.
Go see that, and then look at your situation and find out how grateful you'll be for what you do have.
Absolutely. And if this is my message from this whole conversation. If you want to make America great again, do it within yourself. Don't expect a president to make America great again. He or she is one person. He or she is one person. They can't
with
do
only
that.
So much control.
But you have 1,000% control over your life and your destiny. And if you want it, go out and get it.
So
I did.
What are some ways that these people can make America great again? Give them some examples, such as what?
Get off your ass and work, and get off the couch. Stop expecting. I mean, what did JFK say? Ask for what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you.
And I love that.
And it's the truth.
Yeah.
Stop expecting everything to be handed to you. Stop expecting. Look, I have a real estate business, and I've worked my butt off from being a realtor. Now I have 10 real estate agents. I sell in Big Bear and I sell in Palm Springs. I have offices in both. That wasn't handed to me. I didn't grow up with a parent that could give me money. Everything that you have, you can have the world if you want it. But you got to work for it. So if you're going to sit there with your hand out, it's generally not going to get filled. And you're going to sit there and you're going to be bitter and angry. And I think a lot of this is that we're going through right now is a steer from social media. People are seeing people live wonderful lives and go on these vacations and do all these wonderful things, and they get it bitter in their heart because maybe they haven't accomplished that in their life, or they're too old to accomplish it in their life. And that's unfortunate. But that's not anybody's problem but your own.
Man,
You did it to yourself.
And this is why I love talking to you, bro. You're dropping some knowledge here. And what's interesting is that, like COVID, I'll use for an example. Like, we don't know what the backlash or what the repercussions are going to be for quite some time. And same with social media. Like, what's the darkness of social media? And that's one of those things right there, is comparing your lives to other people's. That's awful. And let's be honest, half the stuff we see on Facebook isn't real anyway.
Yeah, and let me tell you.
Let me take a picture with a Bentley. That is not your Bentley.
Absolutely.
Now, when I had a Bentley, it was mine, but no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Total joke. Go ahead.
I know I wrote in it. So I was in Big Bear the other day, and I was horseback riding, and
I saw those pics.
Yeah, and one of the people that were with us, that were taking us around, we had one of our friends that was a doctor with us, and she goes, "Look, I'm defiant about these masks." She goes, "I don't understand, she's like, I don't want to wear a wet mask, so I don't wear it." Well,
And she's a doctor.
no, she was one of the trainers on the horses. So
gotcha.
the doctor was with us. She was directing this question to
I
him.
see.
So, the first thing I want to say to that is selfish. You're not just wearing that mask for you. You're wearing it for all of us, and it's a small price to pay, and it's not even a price to protect somebody else's health. Simple as that. But I kept my mouth shut because I wanted to hear the professional, the doctor's opinion. And he goes, "Look, wear the mask or don't. You do whatever you want to do. But if everybody had worn those masks, the first month they were asked to wear those masks, this would be under control."
Totally.
And he says, "I know that for a fact. And let me tell you why I know that. Because I am an emergency room doctor, and I'm treating COVID cases constantly, and I've never gotten it because I have protective gear on."
Yeah.
So,
Proof's in the pudding.
yeah, exactly. So I thought that was very interesting. And
She didn't put her mask on, though.
no, but you got a horse away from me.
Let's turn the conversation to a message of hope, because that's something that I think you've kept that theme in the conversation. I love that about you, and it shows through your social media, B, your authenticity, and C, your friendship. So give us some messages of hope, and also tell us ways that you keep yourself happy.
Hope, hope is living within yourself, being true to yourself. Making sure that if you want to take that vacation to Hawaii, or you want to take that vacation to Egypt, whatever, is that you do it. You live up to your dream. The hope for this country that's going on right now is there is hope, because our country just spoke in the largest turnout of voters, the largest for both people running. Huge turnout, right? So our country is speaking, and they spoke volumes of what direction they want to go into. And what they want to go into is, what I'm hearing, is they want to go into everybody stay in your lane and let people live, appreciate and love each other, and you'll be fine. Getting upset and bitter and mad and trying to take people's rights away, those days are gone, hopefully. And it's not healthy. It's negative energy. Just be the best you can be, and be the best neighbor you can be. Be good to each other.
I like that. We just had a new neighbor the other day, and we chatted with each other. I'm like, this is nice. You should be introducing your new neighbors to the neighborhood and being friendly and chatting people up. What are things that you do to keep yourself happy? I mean, this is obviously a part of your character, part of your makeup, but I see a lot of books. Do you read? Do you TED Talk? Do you meditate?
I love to read. What makes me happy is when I get to spend time with you, Brian. Makes me happy.
He wants more views on this, guys, so let's make sure we share. Go ahead.
I have a log cabin in Big Bear. I go up there, and I just love, growing up on a farm. It kind of takes me back to the woods, and I love going up there and being around nature. And traveling. Traveling is everything. Once again, learning other people's cultures and being around. I mean, we went to Australia in January before COVID really hit. And we got to have dinner at a friend's parents' house and their culture. It was just wonderful. It was just opening yourselves up to that, and becoming friends with people internationally is an incredible experience. To these people are now going to come see us and stay a couple of weeks at our house and experience our life.
So for some people that don't live such a big life as you,
Right.
how can they make something like that happen? Right?
You do it within your community. I mean, perfect example.
I like
is,
the Indian, the neighbors that were Indian. Go ahead.
Yeah. So do it within your community. Get to know your neighbors. And I'm not saying your next door neighbors. They don't have to be your next door neighbors. Get to know a prime example. And look, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or say that I'm better than anybody else. But My mother was in the hospital, and she was in extended care when she passed. Thank God she didn't get COVID. That's what I was afraid of, because she did have respiratory problems. I couldn't be there. I couldn't fly home to see my mom. All I could do, thank God for FaceTime, because that did help, and I talked to her every day. So when that happened, I put out on social media that anybody that had any challenges, cancer, respiratory problems, or whatever, I would go and I would shop for them so they wouldn't have to get out. And I had a couple of people around town that I would go shop for. And look, the feeling that you get from that, for just doing something good for somebody else, a complete stranger, and what they get for that is amazing. So think about that and do it. Don't just say, gosh, I wish I could get involved in an organization. Get involved in an organization. If you feel that you have something that you stand up for, that you don't like the way something's being how somebody's being treated or something's being said, do something about it. Be vocal. Be vocal. You don't have to just do it through your voice. Do it through your actions.
And you've always done that. I've witnessed you do that. You always tend to, you stand up for what's right, and you stand up for the people.
The people, I mean, it's that's what it's about. This is not just about me. It's not about my happiness. The way that I can be happy is when everybody around me is happy. Look, my real estate business, I've been fortunate enough, especially in this last year, to have a really successful business. And thank God for that, and thank Palm Springs and the surrounding areas for that, for people entrusting in me. But I'm only as good as my weakest agent. So if I'm not out there with my other 10 agents, getting them that they're successful, that they're making money, they're not going to stay with me. Building loyalty with people and showing that you actually do care it's everything. It's truly everything. And you know what? When you build that loyalty with other people, they will never leave you. And that's the way I feel.
Well, yeah, again, you've got a zillion friends, and I think that's also part of, again, your makeup, but B, part of who you are. You love people, and you are a very loyal person and loyal friend, so loyalty, I like that. And again, as we tend to get towards the end of the conversations, I like to always give people, like, real plans of action. Which you kind of did. Do you have anything else you said? So anything else you want to mention? You said traveling.
Yeah, one last thing is, this is a very big word for me, is don't be a sheeple. Don't be just a person that just goes along with the pack. Be okay standing out and doing something different. If you don't believe it's right, don't go along with it. Don't go along with it, and don't do it. And you know what? If you're alone, at least you have your integrity and your dignity. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'll see so much is listen to the positive messages that people give and support the people that are heading in that direction. Don't listen to the bullies. Don't listen to these people who are putting other people down and calling people names. Don't do that. Don't raise your kids that way. This is, look, I don't have any kids. I don't have anybody to bring in for the future. But it's important to me that everybody else that has kids out there, that those kids get the right message. And these kids, that it's at the age between, 3 and 15, is they need to see their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles stand up for what's true, the integrity of our country, and in the integrity of just being a really good person.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, that if anything has gone wrong in my life, that I've seen this gone backwards, is people that have gotten so selfish to not look at the future and what the future holds. And the only way that we stand up and we continue to be the greatest country is when we care about all the people.
Yeah.
We the people, all the people. It's got to be about all of us. It can't just be about
with an
one
emphasis
section.
on the kids, with an emphasis on the youth.
And yeah, exactly, and making sure that they're getting the message. If you act this way, if you are a bully, if you talk about people like this, there are repercussions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our election just...
And that makes you a bad person.
Yeah.
It does.
It makes you a bad person. And I think that's what our election just showed. I think it's...
I mean, watching like a lot of the people on my social media account and like just watching the news or whatever I was watching, learning how people were so quick to... Their morale, they had no qualms with giving up their integrity or their moral compass. There was like, it just all went out the window.
That's where, that's where I'm baffled the most.
Same.
Is to see a religious sector that has just been able to accept things that they never would believe in. They would never allow.
Right.
They would never, ever allow that. And then all of a sudden they're just okay with it. That's what blows my mind.
And that's what blew my mind too.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's very, very scary.
And well, that goes into the word sheeple.
Yep.
You know,
it's exactly what it is.
They're so easily and so quick to say, okay, let me follow this. Let me be a sheep. But forget the circumstances, forget the repercussions, forget the detail. Right?
Right.
And for me, the devil's in the detail, you know, and there was just, again, we tanked as far as morally, as far as our integrity as a country, just tanked. And also, you know this by talking with your friends from other countries.
Well,
I mean,
absolutely.
My goodness.
I mean,
talk about the dunce cap, you know?
There was not one person internationally that I know that ever understood why this president was in office.
Completely.
I mean, not one person ever. They looked at us as such an embarrassment.
Yeah.
And that is like, and I'm going, how in the world? And I'm talking about people that I've loved and respected my whole life that were sheeple, that just went around. Listen, one of the problems I have, the biggest problems I have in politics is because of the two-party system. There should never be a two-party system, and this is not a football game. It's not about your team winning or losing.
Agree.
We are all Americans,
right,
and we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So if one of us are hurting, whether you voted for this person or not, all of us are hurting.
I agree with that. I try to steer away from political conversations because it's just not a good look,
right,
especially as we're moving into, you know, hopefully a different era. But so I don't want to offend anybody, and we want to keep things as you know, as open on both sides as we can. But I appreciate always you and kind of your candor with that, because you and I definitely are in line with a lot of this. And it seems very common sense to you and I, but for other people, their side seems common sense. You know?
Exactly.
All right, let's wrap this up because we're getting ready to come to an end here. But is there anything else you want to lend to the conversation? Anything else you want to add?
Nope. I just think the future looks bright, and I'm excited about where we're going. So
I like it. Hope, hope, hope.
Hope, hope, hope.
Future looks bright. Okay, everybody. Well, a huge thanks to John Moore. Thank you for letting me into your home. Thanks for the conversation. Keep these conversations going on or off cam. Always a big thanks to you. I tell you to love on each other and yourselves. Please make sure right now, like our page if you have not yet, and follow us on all social media platforms, because we need you to be able to make this happen. So we love you. A big thanks to you, and thank you. I'll see you soon.